All right, so let's talk a little bit about SmackDown Live, the first episode of the new era of SmackDown. Total honesty, not as impressive as Raw in my opinion, but still very good overall.
Yeah, I had a conversation with one of my friends about this. You have to fill 2 hours with one third of the roster. I mean,
Sure.
it's and you don't have as many champions on SmackDown as you do on Raw.
Just the world and the Intercontinental.
Just the World and the Intercontinental versus
Tag team, women's, and the United States.
on Raw. So I mean, for a first Raw or for a first SmackDown Live, I think that this is pretty good. I mean, they did some, taking care of business sort of issues and setting up a number one contender. I think that was good. Obviously, we'll get into that.
Well, but like you said a second ago, they set up a number one contendership to face Dean Ambrose at SummerSlam. They have to have. They can't let Raw upstage them. They've got to defend their title. And interesting how they decided to do it. They did a six-pack challenge, which of course is six guys in the ring.
It's not a beauty contest. They're not going to show their stomachs. It's actually a six-man wrestling match. I do know that some of our friends will make fun of it being called a six-pack challenge.
Probably, yes. They named five competitors right off the bat. And these were, in my opinion, two of them very obvious choices in Cena and AJ Styles. Cena, obviously, multi-time world champion. AJ Styles, in his 7 months with the company now, has had a couple opportunities at the title. So I feel like good choices there, smart choices.
And there too, AJ Styles was the second pick for SmackDown. So I mean,
True.
If you're going from draft picks standpoint, it does make sense for AJ to be in there. Obviously, Cena is all over your SmackDown promotions.
All over your WWE everything.
Yes. He's on Today's Show. He's hosting ESPYs. He's got to be in the match. That makes sense. I mean, to that point though, some of the picks in there were kind of surprising, and I was kind of intrigued to see why they went that route.
Agreed. Bray Wyatt was chosen, which is overdue in my opinion. He should be back in the main event picture. He is talented enough.
We're here.
Other picks the other two picks they made were Baron Corbin, which I see Jansen shaking his head. I don't know how I will handle the idea of Baron ever being a champion. I won't know until I see it, and that I think is part of the problem with his call-up. He came up to the main roster WrestleMania Day, won the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, which is fine. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
It was a good showing. But before that, he had never won the NXT Championship. To my recollection, I don't think he'd even ever been in the title match. I don't think he had gotten a title opportunity. I remember him being in a number one contenders match against Joe and Zayn, but he lost. He was the guy who was like tapped out in the middle of the ring.
Well, if you look historically though at all of the people that have been brought up from NXT, with the exception of Kevin Owens, everybody that's come up from NXT and debuted to the main roster is all lost. They've all lost multiple matches leading up to their debut. And Kevin Owens is the only one that showed up on Raw with the NXT Championship and
Put a hurt into the Cena.
and yeah. So I mean, I can understand. It is a little bit of a weird booking standpoint in terms of, here's this person that is done fairly well on NXT, but loses pretty regularly. Here he is on Raw, or here he is on SmackDown. It is a little bit of a kind of a question. Same thing happened with Nia Jax though on Raw.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's not won the NXT Women's Championship. She fought for it a couple times and still has lost. So it is intriguing to see. Same thing happened with Apollo Crews.
Sure. And sadly for Apollo Crews, he kind of has been like floundering around the mid card. But, I'm one step ahead of myself. The other pick that they made was Dolph Ziggler, longtime perennial contender, former world heavyweight champion. definitely one of the workhorses in the locker room, in my opinion. Plus, represent Northeast Ohio. I mean, come on. Apparently, he's going into the Kent State Hall of Fame. Did not know that until SmackDown, which is cool. I think it's really awesome that they're going to do that. So they made those 5 picks. Then they announced a battle royal,
which, honestly, in terms of like what was kind of being promised for SmackDown, I was surprised to see them actually pick people to begin with. With the way that Raw was set up, they set up 2 Fatal 4-Way matches, and all of those were handpicked by Mick Foley and Stephanie McMahon. It was interesting to see on SmackDown, this land of opportunity as they were, touting it that, they were going to handpick 5 people and then leave the 6th spot open. But I'm glad to see that they did at least that.
Do something.
They did say, well, this is an here's an opportunity here for somebody to, jump to the head of the line. And, obviously, we had a winner from that.
Yes. Apollo Crews did end up winning it, which, total honesty, like to your point about them making the 5 picks, I'm sitting there when they were about to announce the 6th pick, I'm trying to determine who do they even have on the ring right now that is even qualified really to be
The Miz.
That was I was like, it's got to be The Miz. He's the only one. And they might kind of like how they were talking about, Dean Ambrose kept the title on SmackDown. The Miz kept the title on SmackDown. So I mean, maybe give him a reward. Nope. He wasn't even in the Battle Royal.
No, and neither was Randy Orton.
Yeah, which I understood Orton, because Orton already has a match at SummerSlam.
Yeah, but if
it's still the world title.
If you're Randy Orton,
yeah.
I mean, I'm going to go in both.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, then they'd be like, well, Orton wins the title from Dean Ambrose. Oh, and then Brock Lesnar takes it. Did I call him Brock Lesnar? I really do like Brock Lesnar. He just needs to be full-time, not part-time.
You're just afraid to be suplexed by a PED machine.
You would be terrible. Dude is like 3 foot taller than both of us.
Side tangent, WWE is not suspending Brock Lesnar because he is part-time.
Yeah, I saw that. I feel like that's a little dirty.
Very dirty. How do you feel as part of the main roster that you show up week in and week out and you get tested, and somebody like Roman Reigns, who just had a suspension for 30 days...
For Adderall, reportedly. They don't officially report that, but multiple sources were reporting Adderall, which is ADHD medication.
Brock Lesnar gets caught with, a performance-enhancing drug. It was an estrogen blocker. I don't know really what that means.
It's designed, from what I understand, from what I read, it's designed to block, because even as males, our body still produces a small amount of estrogen, I suppose. It's designed to block that out, because then it increases your overall testosterone production to make up for it, which will help you perform more, in the gym and not like that. This podcast is not dirty, darn it.
You said it.
But yeah, it was an estrogen blocker. Again, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but from what I understand, it's designed to block estrogen, increase testosterone levels, and help you perform when you're trying to train and do actually fight.
I'm sure Sable appreciated those estrogen blockers.
Probably. But yeah, so not suspending him. Side tangent, for another day, maybe for next week's episode, or sometime in between here and SummerSlam, we'll cover it. But yeah, so they did a battle royal. Apollo Crews did end up winning, so now we've got our 6-pack challenge for later in the night. So you're looking at these 6 guys on paper. Again, maybe we're just jaded wrestling fans. I don't know about you, but I'm like, oh gee, John Cena's gonna win, and we're gonna get John Cena as the 16-time world champion, and blah 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 blah.
Well, and here's what again I was intrigued by, because you had that same scenario on Raw. You had Roman Reigns versus Finn Balor in the main event. The winner of that faces Seth Rollins for the new WWE Universal Champion. So there's an opportunity here is Roman going to win? Are we going to have the exact same stuff that we've had before? And while Seth and Roman have good matches, and I'm sure that they would put on a good match because Seth Rollins is phenomenal.
Yes.
And Roman Reigns is okay.
He's getting better. He's trying. He is trying. Yeah. Legitimately, he is trying.
Yes. But Finn Balor goes over on Raw, and he wins, and he becomes the #1 contender and is now facing Seth. Something new. Good for the new era. Same thing happens on SmackDown. We have this 6-pack challenge, and in there you have the guy, not Roman Reigns. I'm talking the guy, the face
WWE.
that runs the place, John Cena. And
I think that's an exact Shane McMahon quote.
Yes. And even a couple spots in that 6-pack challenge, there's here comes John Cena, 5 moves of doom, here he goes. Mm-hmm. He's going to hit an AA and he's going to win this and it's going to be over. Yep. But because of the way that they booked it and the way that it went down, Ziggler ends up picking up the win. Kent State, Northeast Ohio boy, going to be in the SummerSlam main event for the championship. But again, it's good to see that. I don't know if it's just they're looking at this as a fresh start, and they're going to try to highlight some people that maybe deserve some shots and something new. But again, it was.
Because let's face it, Ziggler hasn't. We were talking about Curtis Axel being Mr. Irrelevant. Dolph Ziggler hasn't been relevant since the brand split ended.
Oh, I will say this, that I hope, and I know that there was a very big pop for him winning on SmackDown. He works so much better as a heel.
He does.
Ziggler should turn heel. Say I did this on my own. I didn't need you guys to do this.
He probably will. Now that you bring that up, it's a good point. He probably will, just because Dean Ambrose is. He's not to the level where Stone Cold was, where it was like, I'm just going to come out and do whatever I want as I please, and Stone Cold was the perfect tweener character. Guys like Ziggler need to still be very definitive face or heel, and I agree. I think he works better as a heel, and I think their smartest move with him would be turn him heel and take this on. Mm-hmm. The only problem that you could run into there, and future calling kind of thing. Again, we don't lose at all with the WWE Universal Championship match. I do believe Rollins will still walk out. I've been surprised before, but then Rollins is still a heel. Then you'd have a heel champion on both shows if Ziggler were to win. So it's kind of like,
I mean, I don't necessarily mean that.
Then
Ziggler,
legitimately every championship in WWE, with the exception of the women's and the tag team, are held by heel wrestlers.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
That is a lot. Which I think, again, topic for another day. Who holds the championships? Is there a balance between good and evil on wrestling? I do think, though, that he could play a cocky heel without being so pandering. I think that it doesn't necessarily need to be that in-your-face Kevin Owens style of heel, because Kevin Owens is great at being a heel. Mm-hmm. But I think that Ziggler can play that cocky sort of guy that I can go out there and show off. I mean, he's been using that name of the show off, and he uses the Sweet Chin music, super kick, which again we've had discussions about before.
Super kicks of doom
all over the place. But I think that they need to do something a little bit more with this character, because while that was a surprising win, I think that this is Ziggler's opportunity to shine, and where he shines best is being cocky and being kind of a heel.
Yeah. Agreed. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with him overall. As we talked about in the Battle Royal, the 6-pack challenge, Randy Orton wasn't involved because he actually had a match against The Miz scheduled. Maybe that's why both weren't in it, because they had. Well, it wasn't scheduled.
He goaded Maurice into getting the match.
Okay. But he did have his return match against the The Miz there. Um, total honesty, I was watching SmackDown on DVR. I may have fast forwarded that match.
Not going to lie, watching it on Hulu, may have fast forwarded.
Well, I guess we both know where we stand. Wait, is that because of Randy Orton or is because of The Miz? Because I did it only because of Randy Orton.
See, I mean, I like them both. I do like
Okay.
Orton. I do like The Miz. I think that at SummerSlam, Brock and Orton are going to have a good match. He does have, Orton does do very well, and he has played his character for, a long time very well. Again, another one of those sorts of people that works better as a heel. Orton as a heel is so much better than Orton as a face. And, I mean, the promos that he's had between Battleground with Jericho and his shots fired sort of promo against Brock, talking about no enhancements being needed to go to Viperville.
Shots fired when he has two
Yes.
violations on his own.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's the pot calling Kettle Black.
Exactly.
But and then on Miz TV, he was a bit entertaining there too, saying that the Miz played with himself well. So it is interesting to see a little bit more of an evolution of Randy Orton. Let's see what.
I see what you did there. Yes. It's good to see a bigger veteran back. I just hope, again, as we talked about, with this new era of stars that are going to get the opportunities, I don't want to see, somehow Orton pulls out this victory on Lesnar, and then all of a sudden Orton's like, well, I should be #1 contender, and then Backlash, the first SmackDown-based pay-per-view on September 11th, we have whoever the champ is versus Orton, and then all of a sudden Orton's champion again. He's, as you put it, he's evolving. He's transcended the part where he doesn't need the title to not necessarily be relevant, but to be over with the fans that he has.
Yeah.
He doesn't need that title at all.
He's very much at this level. Him, Orton, Cena. I liken them to Jericho. Jericho has done it all. Orton and Cena have done it all. I mean, aside from them giving Cena the rub so that way he can say that he's tied with Ric Flair for the championship, he doesn't need it. And that was shown when he was holding the United States Championship. With his United States Open challenges, I mean, week in, week out, he's having 5-star matches and putting on, clinics and highlighting...
Putting over these people, not necessarily putting them over, but putting them on spotlight.
Yeah, and highlighting, Sami Zayn and, Neville and all of those guys, and I think Cena, in some of his interviews recently, has kind of hinted to that he knows where he stands in the company, that he doesn't necessarily need a championship in order to really bring it. I will say this: if SmackDown's ratings start to falter,
the belt's going on Orton or Cena.
It's going on Cena, because Cena's going to show up on Today's Show and he's going to plug SmackDown, and then instantly your ratings go up. So I mean, it is kind of a catch-22. Do we see some new matchups? I mean, Ziggler versus Ambrose at SummerSlam. That's what us as wrestling fans wanted to see. There was only, in that match, there's only a 50-50 shot that we get some people that we wanted to win. I mean, in my estimation, I would have liked to see Wyatt versus Ambrose. I would have liked to see Bray Wyatt get an opportunity at him. Ziggler, obviously, him winning, great. Overdue guy's a workhorse, knows how to sell, knows how to put on a match that is entertaining and well done. Obviously, AJ, he's going to be a future world champion at some point in time. Guaranteed. And even to an extent, I mean, Cruz, but
he's not ready yet.
He's not there yet. So that's what I'm saying is, in terms of like people that could have won it, I mean, we had a 50-50 shot.
Cruz had kind of a flat reaction. Like, it wasn't like mind-blowing when he came out the first time on the Raw, or even when he won the Battle Royal. Like, people were happy he won the Battle Royal, don't get that wrong. It just wasn't like the oh my god reaction. I almost feel like if we were in the arena for SmackDown, we had just watched Apollo Crews win, and then they play the vignette on the screen for Shelton Benjamin to be returning to SmackDown. I feel like we probably would have got a bigger reaction from the video of Shelton Benjamin playing as opposed to Apollo Crews winning. And it's sad because I like Apollo Crews. I think he is ridiculously talented. If we ever see him really get a true shot, it'll be a couple years down the road.
I think so too. And I think, again, that is another one of those NXT call-ups. I mean, I understand, like, where they come from with it, and a lot of the NXT call-ups have done, well. Obviously, Sami Zayn, phenomenal. Kevin Owens, phenomenal. All of the women.
Tyler Breeze, not so much.
I wasn't going to go there. All of the women that have been brought up, Charlotte, Sasha, and Becky Lynch, all great. Apollo Crews was only on NXT for a month, maybe 2. I mean, it
was longer than that.
I mean, it was a short amount of time.
It was short.
To me, it felt like maybe a month or 2. I mean, maybe it was a little bit longer, but
I think he actually, I could be wrong, I think he actually debuted at a TakeOver. It might have been Brooklyn last year.
It's possible. But he wasn't on NXT very long, and when they said that he was debuting on Raw, I was really surprised to see that fast.
Yeah.
I think that if you leave him in NXT, let him simmer down there for a little while, get over with that crowd, then he goes over much better on the main roster.
Agreed. Speaking of a little bit over, Heath Slater. Hashtag sign Heath Slater. He was trying to get that trending, as he was the only person in the entire draft not to be chosen by either show. And I believe I reported this last week. They've got to be doing some kind of angle with that. Sure enough, shows up on SmackDown talking about how he's a free agent and that SmackDown should sign Heath Slater. I like Heath Slater a lot. I think he's funny. I think he's very talented. Unfortunately for him, you can call it return, but technically he's been in NXT for a few months, but the main roster return of the Man Beast Rhino had something else to say about sign Heath Slater.
Yeah. To that point, Shane McMahon, the commissioner of SmackDown, did come out and address Heath Slater on SmackDown and said, yes, I am looking at the number 1 free agent in all of wrestling right now, obviously alluding to Rhino, who then
popping up out of the
gored
underneath
the crap out of Heath Slater.
Oh yeah. It'll be interesting again to see where they continue the angle. I'm sure he's going to show up on Raw on Monday and interrupt there a little bit. It's nice to see Rhino. I was a fan of him at the end of the original ECW and when he first came in, just because man could just plow through anything. I'm not a fan of the spear overall as a finisher. It doesn't matter who's using it. Even he's probably not the originator, but like the originator of the popularity of the spear with Goldberg. Still don't dig the spear. It's just a tackle. Some people can hit it better than others. We won't name the others who can't hit it well. The guy. I'd be nice. But the gore version of the spear has always, in my opinion, looked so impactful.
But it's also who's behind that. I mean, you for years had Paul Heyman and
Gore!
Yeah, just in the background, just screaming and yelling. And so, I mean, if you had somebody to that level, screaming and yelling after every time it hit, I think you'd be able to sell that for a, Samoan person on Raw.
Perhaps. Either way, it's nice to see. Last thing we're going to talk about as far as SmackDown goes, the relevancy of the tag team and women's divisions. We'll start off with the tag team division here. If you watch the Battle Royal, there are quite a few good tag teams on SmackDown. You were naming them earlier. We got the Ascension.
We have the Ascension. You have American Alpha, which in my opinion is the best tag team going in all of the WWE, including the New Day. And I'm going to go that high.
Okay.
You also have Breezango. You have Rob's favorite, the Usos, and a couple other ones as well. But there's about 5 or 6 tag teams on SmackDown that could legitimately have a very good tag team division. But again, the question is,
are they relevant without the titles?
Yes, and I mean there is some talent there, but again, like we were talking earlier before we started the podcast, just talking over this whole thing, you do need some championships on SmackDown. There needs to be another tag team championship, because if you have these tag teams, and if you draft American Alpha from NXT to a show that doesn't have a championship, they're almost fighting over nothing. Yep. And at that point, it also hurts the legitimacy of SmackDown, for both the tag teams and the women. Should it be if they're fighting on SmackDown, are they only fighting to prove themselves to be worthy to go over to Raw to fight for the championship?
The A show versus the B show.
Yeah,
which is always going to be the argument with SmackDown versus Raw anyways.
Yeah.
People made that argument when they were like, oh, Raw is 3 hours long, they get 3 picks for every 2 picks that SmackDown gets. It's like, that makes them better.
I'm just going to say right now that Raw should go back to 2 hours.
I think most people will agree with you on that.
I'm going to put that opinion out there right now. But with
2 hours of Raw, 1 hour of a Cruiserweight division show.
Yeah.
There you go.
And to that point, another thing that we talked about is talking about the women's division for SmackDown. Is the women's division for SmackDown as talented as Raw is? I'm going to venture to say not. You have Becky Lynch, and that's about it. I mean, you have.
She's not that amazing to make the rest of them look good. That's for sure.
I mean, I love Becky Lynch. She's my favorite, but she's not enough to solidify a women's division on SmackDown. Now, the fix that I had said, and Rob and I had kind of talked about, was, and to kind of talk a little bit about Raw as well. You mentioned on the first episode of the podcast that there's going to be a Raw exclusive Cruiserweight division. And the rumors going around right now is that for the Cruiserweight Classic, the winner of that is going to be the first Cruiserweight champion.
Which would make sense.
You have 32 Cruiserweights from around the world. The one that wins that should be a champion.
Because champion means the best.
Yeah, the best.
Overall.
And that makes sense, but does it make sense for Raw? Was my question. With the Women's Championship being on Raw, and then you have this kind of B-list of women on SmackDown, it feels like it would have suited better for the women for Raw to have an exclusive women's division, have that on your flagship show, with Stephanie being the commissioner over there, and making sense for a woman commissioner to be, heading of this women's division, and then have the Cruiserweights be on SmackDown, where Daniel Bryan, who is always looked down upon because of his size, would be more willing to give the opportunity for the Cruiserweights. It just doesn't make much sense to me, because, it's either you're going to have to put a tag team championship and a women's championship on SmackDown, to legitimize those women, or you could have just left them on Raw, and they could have all fought for the women's championship on Raw.
Yep. Agreed. I personally don't want to, as far as the women's title goes, I don't want to see a split. I don't want to see a separate women's and divas title again. We don't need the purple butterfly back. Leave it alone.
Oh,
it should
awful.
go away.
That was so bad.
Despite the fact, as we talked about, a lot of the women on SmackDown, I would see more as the diva versus the woman wrestler. Especially with, we won't mention her name.
All Red everything.
Yeah. And even to that extent, you've got Like, Natalia is on Total Divas. She's a great wrestler, but she's on Total Divas. You know, just don't bring back the dumb butterfly, please.
Yeah.
It's, I'd be okay with each show having exclusive women, but the title needs to go back and forth. Whoever the champion is needs to be on both shows. Then you have, you know, that champion Backlash, the first Smackdown specific the first brand specific pay-per-view in the new era. September 11th, exclusively on the WWE Network for only $9.99 a month. We are not sponsored by WWE. But the champion will defend against a SmackDown woman. Next pay-per-view, Raw pay-per-view. The champion will defend against a Raw woman. It doesn't leave a whole lot of time for build-up. Understandable. You're going to have the champion not be involved in some of the build-up. But moving it back and forth is the only way to keep both divisions relevant if you're going to keep them on both shows. And I know that they don't want to put both of them on one show. If you have some people who are like, man, I only watch the women's wrestling because, you know, Becky's so hot or Charlotte's so hot or whatever. You know, the people who do watch it because they want a nice dose of the WWE TNA portion of their program. Then all of a sudden you've removed that demographic from one show versus the other. So having them not all on one show, I get that point. So just like you said, they're fighting for nothing though. They're fighting to prove that they're the best woman, but they don't have anything to show for being the best woman.
Yeah.
And same for the tag teams. That one I'm okay with if they create a secondary title belt. Just don't call it the Universal Tag Team Champions. Be somewhat original with it at that point.
Well, I mean, I think you could make a claim for returning the WWE or the World Tag Team Championships. I would even be okay with them bringing back the old championship belts. That would
the original like Raw version with the red titles.
No, I'm talking the old school stuff, the stuff that the Hardy Boys and Dudley Boys, fought over.
Oh, okay.
That would be a good one.
Yeah, it'd make the divisions a little bit more relevant.
Especially with the Intercontinental Championship being the old school design as well. I mean, it would kind of bring
new
that
era but retro.
Yeah, like new but retro.
Gotcha. Understand. I agree.